Welcome to another episode of the 209 podcast. I'm your host, Angelina Martin. This week, we're speaking with Manteca native Charity Steele. She's a behavior analyst and recently wrote her first book, and she had a lot of tips to share on parenting during the pandemic. A special thanks to our sponsor this week, City of Turlock Municipal Services. Now let's get into the conversation. All right. Hello, Charity. Welcome to the 209 podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. For our viewers at home, we are speaking with Charity Steele. She's a behavior analyst and she is an author from the 209. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here with you.
Yeah, we're excited too. I think this is a really good time to talk about behavior and, speaking with someone who is an expert at analyzing it should be a really interesting episode. So I wanted to ask you, for people who may not know, what is a behavioral analyst? I'm sorry.
It's a great question. And I think something in our industry that we have been working for many years to really get out there and be more mainstream, in education and now in the medical field, we're recognized. So we primarily are recognized as board certified behavior analysts. For short, you might hear us be called BCBAs. But essentially, we enter into an environment, conduct an assessment of behavior, and then put behavior change procedures in place using applied behavior analysis and behavioral methodologies. Yeah. So a lot of technical words in there, but that's kind of the gist of how we go about doing things. It's a mix of psychology and science.
That's awesome. I think one of the reasons I was excited to do this podcast is because I really don't know anything about this field, and the best interviews always come when you have a lot of questions and, have a lot of curiosity about something. So what type of people are you usually helping in your field of work?
Yes, so we have a long history of working with people with developmental disabilities. Our science is relatively new in terms of psychology. Psychology has been around for hundreds of years, and behavioral science wasn't really entering into the picture until around the 1930s. So we're still pretty young in the game, and it wasn't until the last 20 years that we started to be recognized within the medical community. So we still very much work with people with developmental disabilities, but the science of behavior applies to all things that is behavior. And that's what I love so much about it, is it really applies to anything. So I use it in raising my daughter, poor thing. She's got to live with a behaviorist at home who's constantly analyzing her every move and coming up with a plan for that.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. Is she always on her best behavior because of that, or how does that work?
And that's a great question, because what I love about behavior is we can predict it and we can manipulate variables to influence it. But, we still make our choices. So sometimes she chooses the course that maybe I wouldn't have chosen, right. But she has that choice. And that's just what makes it so special, is that the principles of the science allow us to look at a situation like that and say, okay, next time, how is it that I can motivate you more or deter you more from choosing that path?
So you've been in this field for a little over a decade, right?
Yes. I've been consulting in private practice for a little over a decade. I actually started out in the field, oh my goodness, 21 years ago.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I graduated high school and immediately became a paraprofessional working with the San Joaquin County Office of Education in an autism school, actually located in Manteca. And it was my first experience ever really working in special education. And I was hooked. I just thought it was so amazing to enter into a situation and help someone to learn to do something in a way that improved their life and improved the life of the people around them. And I was just like, what is this thing that we're doing? What is this called? And it changed the course of my education from then on.
Yeah.
Which also means that I've watched the field grow and change and really expand in what it is that we can do and who we can reach. And it's been a pretty amazing journey.
So you work a lot with children. You have worked a lot with children. And in our issue of 209 magazine that's actually just came out this week, one of our authors, Teresa Hammond, she wrote a column titled "What About Our Kids?" And she's talking about the pandemic and kind of how this has affected children. So from your viewpoint and like with your knowledge of this field and the behavior of children, what have you seen during the pandemic with children either out of school or home alone, distance learning? What's kind of been your experience with it?
It's been really interesting. The clients that I work with, I think, have had a unique experience because my involvement in their life means that the structure that I've always tried to build into the treatment planning stayed as much as it possibly could stay. So that was the focus, was the structure. And I would say for the families that I work with that had, my clients who had siblings, is where I would hear the parents, describe like, so they're doing okay, but their brother over here is having a pretty tough time. And then my daughter is yet to return to school. So she's been out of school for nearly a year. So, I think what it boils down to for all of us is the lack of structure, the change in all of these things that we were used to doing and that naturally forced us to have wake up times and bedtimes and meal times and structured leisure time versus structured work time. There's just so much structure that maybe we didn't realize existed. And that has probably been the most difficult challenge for parents to overcome because they've never had to structure their child's day from morning to bedtime. There was this natural break in the day where they went away to school and were in the care of someone else who provided that structure and that predictability. And I immediately with my clients, week one, I don't even think by the end of week one, within 4 days of realizing that we weren't going to be able to enter back into the home, sent them a 2-page document that outlines not only how they should have structure, but really organizing for the household the key points of what a schedule needs to have. Because I think the simple things like you need to be on a meal plan, sort of gets left behind. You just don't think about it. The kitchen's always there.
Yeah.
Like I'll just go grab something when I'm hungry, and then you're like, it's 2:00, and no wonder I'm hungry.
I'm really curious about that. Like, what is the ideal schedule for a parent at home?
Honestly, the recommendations that I've provided have these themes in them, but that is a big part of it, is saying, what is the ideal schedule for us? Are we all naturally starting our day a little bit later? My daughter doesn't start school till 12:20. That's the first time that she has to be on the computer starting a class. And she's not an early riser. And so we decided that in order for her to get the kind of sleep and just rest and have the structure that worked for her, that we're just going to let her sleep in later than we normally would have when she had a school start time that was 2, 3, and a half hours earlier. And that was a family decision that we made. So things like that, I was asking my parents a lot of those kind of questions. When does it seem natural for you guys to eat? When does it seem natural for you guys to bathe? They're not dirty kids anymore after this day of running around at school. So do they need to take a shower at night before they go to bed? Are they more compliant in the morning? Does it help them to wake up and feel refreshed? Just start asking what things can alleviate this, for lack of a better way of putting it, kind of the stress that exists that maybe we don't recognize as stress, but it's so much change literally overnight.
Yeah.
That to build in little routines and structures and things that are working with the grain rather than against it, it's just a good place to start.
I was one of those students that I definitely benefited from having someone telling me what to do, at all hours of the school day. So I don't know how I would have fared if this happened to me while I was in school. And we see so many inequities between students depending on what kind of life they have at home while they're in school all day. So, now that they're in the homes that are so different from one another, do you think that, or what do you think the long-term implications of this are going to be?
I think we have a road ahead of us to get back. And the truth is, I think people were already struggling with having the structure in their home. But when we're talking about a few hours before school and a few hours after school, and then everyone just kind of wants to relax on the weekend, that maybe the problems that were coming out of not having enough structure weren't as glaring. But once it's all day, every day, now for what has it been, 9-10 months, it's like this, big highlighted issue for some people, and just not being able to figure out, a way to make it work, where there's just this constant sort of, I guess, kind of pressure in the house, or tension is the word I think I'm really searching for. So I think it's going to be a little bit of a learning curve for people to learn the strategies and the ways to kind of come back from this and build in some structure, whether it stays this way. I think most of the places that have opened up, even if they have schools, still have some hybrid models. Mm-hmm. And I think we're all a little bit on pins and needles about how long this is going to last. I mean, it's just kind of,
yeah, everything is so unknown.
Yes. And the way to take control, and so the behavioral aspect of this for us is we look at an environment and we say, well, what can we change? What can we manipulate? Because I can't change everything. I can't manipulate everything, but there's a lot that I can. So what can I change? And more importantly, if I change it, will it have a positive impact on the situation, on the behavior, on our, environment, on everything? And then measuring it. I mean, that's a big part of what we do, is measuring. So looking at, what is it that we're seeing as the issue here? What is it that our children don't want to get off their tablets? And so we're just having this battle every day, multiple times a day, to get off the tablet and to do something else. So what is it that needs to change? Well, we need to motivate them to get off the tablet. I mean, for my clients, it's a pretty easy fix in terms of arrangement. So tablet time doesn't come until after something important happens. And you just got to pick the battle and, stick with it.
Yeah, which I'm sure, I'm not a parent yet, but, I've obviously seen people parent, and especially, nowadays with technology, it was the same when I was a kid, except it was like video games or Nintendo, so it remains constant in that sense, but the technology just changes. So that's been interesting to see. It sounds like the key to success is making those positive changes. What advice would you give to parents in identifying those and how to, stick with the battle? You said, that can be tough.
Yes, it is. So, a schedule is really helpful. That's why I started with a schedule. A schedule is really helpful in just arranging things. We fondly refer to this principle as grandma's rule, but the technical term is PREMAC principle, which is where you arrange the more preferred task after the completion of the less preferred task. So really organizing and structuring a day in which that could be done could be very helpful in motivating the child. And that's the other major part of it, is motivation. If you can have your tablet when you haven't done anything, why are you going to do anything to get your tablet? Or if you've been on it all day and mom threatens to take it away if you don't do your chores, maybe by now you don't care that it's being taken away. You've got lots of time and you'll get it back tomorrow. So it's looking at, like, what is my biggest battle? What is the problem that I'm having the most with? Now, what's happening around that? And this is where BCBAs are experts. One, parents are often too close to the problem. They love their children. and they have a hard time having distance from what is actually happening in a situation. Often having a third party perspective come in, especially someone who's an expert in it, can easily identify, like, okay, this is kind of what's going on here, and they're not motivated to change this behavior, and so they don't want to. And motivation is key. So withholding the thing that they want the most until you get some compliance with the thing you want the most as the parent is a pretty magical arrangement.
Is it bad that I'm like thinking of potty training my dog and giving him a treat after he does the right thing?
No, not at all. I mean, honestly, behavioral principles apply to everything. They apply to all organisms that exist on the planet. There are a set of rules, which I think is very comforting, especially in what's going on right now. There are a set of rules that apply to everyone and everything, and it's just a matter of understanding what the rules are in the situation so that you can, well, I guess using this analogy, play by the rules and encourage change. I can't make anybody do anything. I would love if my 15-year-old daughter never rolled her eyes at me again. Every mother's dream. Not going to happen.
Yeah.
but I can arrange things to discourage that behavior from happening more often. You know, I mean, I can't make her do something different, but I can change how it is that I interact with her to motivate her to act in a different way. So, I mean, it's, you know, that is true with all creatures.
That's interesting when you put it like that, that we all have, you know, the little signals in our brain that make us make decisions, you know, no matter what kind of creature we are. This podcast is getting deep.
It really is. I mean, and you're really hitting on what it boils down to. We are influenced all day long. Our behavior is modified and changed, you know, constantly. Whether or not we recognize what is affecting it is what's important. So when we talk about the pandemic and what's happening with the pandemic and what's going to happen with our children, it's really looking at what is affecting them most. You know, is it the fact that they're not socializing with their friends? What is the impact on them then as a result of that? And if that's the case, then how can I increase their social interactions in a positive way that will make them feel better? Because kids can be on, you know, games all day long, talking to other people and not feel like they're connecting. And so there's a difference in understanding that just because you're talking to your friend on this video game does not mean that you feel like you're connecting with somebody. And that's a really important defining, you know, characteristic of everything that we do.
What do you think is impacting children the most during all of this? Like, I know for me, I'm not a child, but like, I really miss going to like concerts and sporting events. So what do you think, how do you think it's impacting children, or what aspect of the pandemic do you think is having the greatest impact?
I think a big part of it, circling back to structure, is the lack of structure overall. But structure is so much more than there being like work and play. Structure is what helps us to feel safe. And so when we can predict things that are going to happen and we can plan for things that are both fun or not fun, then it creates, I think, or, you know, it kind of reduces anxiety. It like creates sort of a feeling of security of like, well, it's Monday and I know what that means. I'm going to be a little bit tired and I'm going to have to go to school and my teacher is going to make me do something, you know, Monday night for homework and whatever, but at least they know what's coming.
Yeah.
Whereas entering into this situation, I think the lack of predictability, not knowing when they're going to get to see their friends, or expecting that the interaction that they're going to have or the thing that they're going to do is going to feel a certain way because that's what it did before, and then it doesn't. And not understanding why, you know, why am I not excited about this anymore? Probably because you've been doing it on end for 4 months.
It's funny how the phrase that everyone uses for this time is the new normal, when really there is no sense of normalcy whatsoever.
No, there isn't. And with my own family, I would say by probably June, I was turning to my husband and saying, we need to act like this isn't going to end for my sanity. Because I am an extremely structured person. I thrive in structure. I love structure. I run my own business, which means I have to structure my life myself.
Yeah. You run a business helping people find structure.
Yes. So, I mean, it's like my deep passion, but I was finding, you know, it really difficult adjusting to the idea that like you didn't have to get in the car and commute anymore. And at first that was like, yay, probably how my daughter felt, like, oh, I'm not going to school for a few weeks. Cool. And then that passes and it's like, well, this isn't cool anymore.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it.
I want my music that I listen to. I want the podcasting that I, you know, caught up on. I want all of the things that came along with, engaging in that activity, having to do that thing that maybe I didn't particularly like, but brought me all this other stuff. And so I think that's happening with our kids. There are all of these things about school that initially they're like, oh, I don't have to do that they think is cool. And then they can't necessarily articulate all of the tiny things about being in that environment that they miss. Of course, they miss their friends, but there's probably a lot of other stuff that they miss. Things about being in there that made it predictable, and, the smells that they had every day that just made it feel like normal life. Like you're saying, the new norm, and they're like, what's the new norm now? Every week is a different story.
No, that's so true. It changes every week. We asked you on the 209 podcast because we read about you in our sister paper, the Manteca Bulletin. Jason Campbell wrote an amazing story about you and kind of your post-grad journey to building your own business. I was wondering if you could talk about that and what you saw when you graduated and what made you want to change that.
Yes. Thank you for asking. So I am coming out with a book this month. Yes, I'm so excited. So I wrote a book. It's called The Business of Behavior, The Behaviorist Roadmap to Independent Practice. So when I finished graduate school, I immediately started my own independent practice, which is a good chunk of the book, sort of the tales of someone who didn't know what they were doing. And it's strategically written in that way because honestly, I didn't know what I was doing. The industry had not shifted the way that it has since medical insurance got involved and started funding our services. And so the way that we did things was a little bit different, but I didn't want to work for the agencies. The Central Valley happens to have quite a few large agencies that provide services to people with autism. And I just didn't want to work for them. A bit of a go-getter. As my practicum in graduate school did independent work with Valley Mountain Regional Center, I just loved it. I loved being in the clients' homes and working with them from beginning to end on problem behavior and more or less resolving the issue and then kind of moving on. And those were only 6 or 9 month contracts. And so I went out on my own and started working with families, and I'm in what's considered a saturated market, meaning there are a lot of us out there. There are 2 universities that have programs that cater to the degree that we need to work in the field. And now you can get that degree online. So there are more BCBAs than there has ever been. I would meet a family and they would say, I've been on a wait list for 2 years waiting to get someone. I'm like, what? Or even 6 months. And when you're talking about a 2-year-old that has a severe challenge, maybe they're self-injurious or they're running away from their parent, that's frightening, or there's just something going on and you can't get services. I mean, it blows my mind. I'm out there in the world like, hey guys, I'll help you. And they don't even know how to ask. They don't know where to find me. Most of them just happened across me or word of mouth referral. And then I built my caseload to a point where I couldn't take, beyond so many. And I didn't even know who to refer out to. I'm like, I don't know where to send you either. Yeah. So I really think that there is just so much opportunity for behavior analysts to enter into independent practice, to build a caseload. And probably the scariest part about that is the business. It's like, we didn't go to business school. I was like, where do you even start? Yeah. So I wrote a roadmap and I tell you from beginning to end how to build out a business plan and map your future, whatever you want it to look like.
And was part of your idea to write this book based on what you've seen in the field, families waiting months and months to get help?
Yeah, it has just been really heartbreaking to come across certain cases where you just know if the family had received services sooner, that it just wouldn't have been such a hard road. And that's always key. Our literature shows that too, especially with certain populations, that the younger we are able to get to them and provide services, the better the outcome is likely to be. So behaviorists can enter in at any age. I have clients that are in their 70s. So their learning never ends.
Yeah.
But we have a lot of research that supports specifically with autism that the early intervention is extremely helpful, and the earlier we can provide the services. So yes, I have been motivated for many years to help families and behaviorists connect. And we have some ethical rules in terms of how it is that we can market. So I have to be careful in approaching someone and saying, hey, I think you probably use my services.
Even though you're trying to help, that could be offensive to someone.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And in no way would we ever want to present ourselves as asking for the work. Like we are here to assist you, but you do have to be able to find us and request it. Out in the Valley, again, there are quite a few agencies out there that if you're connected with them as BCBAs that they may refer to. And then the regional center is a great resource. But that's in California. I mean, you go out into another state and they don't have regional centers. Their systems are set up differently. So just teaching behaviorists how to understand their market, where they're at, how to let people know about their services. And then we've also created a directory for behaviorists to register that we are currently launching.
Can you talk about that? It seems like an amazing idea, an amazing website.
Yes, so these two things kind of happened in reverse. We started the development of the website last year in January. That was an interesting process. We are in the very early stages of launching this for BCBAs currently, especially in the Central Valley. We are offering this for a year for free, which is currently a message that I have been slowly getting out to the world with my new tech skills. But so great platform. Thank you. Appreciate it. I just could not believe that families weren't able to find us easily, especially with all of the resources that we have in this particular area. And I live out in the Bay Area now. My business is still out in the Central Valley, but I live out in Livermore, and the Bay Area, all the time I'm getting phone calls. And I don't even work out here.
Yeah.
But somehow my name pops up somewhere in something, and people are just like, I've been looking for years and for months. So we built this directory so providers, like what I was doing early in my practice, can say what their specialties are, who it is that they want to work with and would be a good fit to work with. And then families can go on there and find a provider based on their needs and really look for someone that would be a good match for them, because this is a relationship. You got to trust me. I am a stranger walking in your house and telling you how to raise your kids.
If they can't find a behavior analyst, then they can't get that early intervention. So this will really help people.
Yes, I'm hoping so. And the website breaks it down by age groups and different, I call it areas of concern, which is just like the behaviors that you're concerned about, different methodologies that maybe people are familiar or not familiar with, but there are a lot of different methodologies that we use within our science. And it just, kind of breaks down by everything. It has different insurers on there. So if you have insurance that would cover our services, you can look for a provider under the insurance. So I am actively working to get providers on there so that parents go on there. There are people to work with. But yes, it's a really interesting challenge that I can't believe in technology as it is today still exists.
Your book is coming out. You're starting this website. Can you talk about when is the book coming out and when is this website going to be launched so people can find them?
So you can actually find the website right now. I think I am the only provider on there. I am working to get it out. We built it out. The website is Treesourcecom for anyone who would like to check it out. For providers, it costs them absolutely nothing to build a profile and see what it would look like. They could get in there, create an account, build a profile, and see what it is that they would be signing up for as a membership. It's only when you want to publicly publish your profile that then you would enter into membership. But again, for the time being, we are offering everybody a free trial period. And we are offering the BCBAs in the Central Valley because we're concentrating on the Central Valley right now for our initial launch the whole year. We're just we want to get this up so that people can find the providers that are out there that are wanting to offer these services. Yeah. So the book is due to come out February 21st. We're only projecting it to be the Kindle version with the paperback coming out on the 27th. But if I can expedite the paper, I am going to.
Who doesn't love holding a actual book in their hands?
Yes. And it's so the way that the book is designed is it really maps it out. It has what I fondly refer to as mile markers. I mean, it is a roadmap. And the mile markers are goals that I'm telling you to set all throughout the book of like what you need to do in order to take the steps to launch a practice. So that's really interesting. And then it tells you to map it out in your business plan. So as you're completing each of the exercises, it's really working more like a workbook. And the behavior plan you can download. It'll be on our website. So you just go on there, download, and it's a fillable form.
Did you ever think that you would write a book?
Yes, I did actually. So when I first designed Treesourcecom, I thought, gosh, well, here I want providers to get on there and to register and to create these accounts so people can find them, but they might have to start a business first. And so I had conceived at that point in time writing a book, but I honestly thought this would be years away. I thought it would be something that kind of down the road I might do to help the providers. And then it just hit me. I don't know, maybe it was COVID, but everything within the business kind of shifted a little bit. And I just thought, well, gosh, if I really want them to get on there and feel supported, then I should probably give this to them now. Yeah. So the book got pushed up by like a year and a half. And we've been very excited for its release.
We're coming up on the 1-year anniversary of the pandemic, or at least everything getting shut down and our new normal. Of course, people can buy your book once it's out. They can be connected with Behavior Analyst through your website. But what advice would you give parents, moving forward, because we really don't know how much longer this will last?
Yes. So I think really taking time to assess what is going on in their environment with their children, and just asking some questions. I mean, the exact questions probably are going to vary in the home, but really looking at your situation and just saying, what doesn't feel right here? What has changed dramatically? What is everyone complaining about? I mean, listen to your kids. They usually are telling you what they don't like. And kids are going to complain about structure. So let me just say that up front. When you try and put structure in, they're going to tell you they don't want it. Of course, they're going to say that. But the great thing about behavior is that you don't have to listen to what someone says. You can watch what they do. And that's what actually is happening. So they can tell you, I don't like ice cream, but then they eat it. And you're like, you definitely like ice cream. They can tell you the same about broccoli. And then like their plate is somehow magically empty. And you're like, yeah, sure. So kids will often tell you like, I don't like this and like oppose structure, but they really thrive in it. So the same is kind of true, I think, with a lot of the things that are going on right now. Like they'll tell you, I have parents tell me this, they're like, but they'll say that they're bored with their tablet because they have to use it for school and then they're bored with it. And I'm like, sure. Yeah. Sure, they're bored with it. And they probably do get bored with it after a few hours. But if you take it away and structure the fun things that they want to do on it, it'll be pretty surprising how much they want to have that thing. So it's, for parents, it's a tough thing to do, to take a step back, look at the situation and not say, this is what it was and I miss it. Because everyone wants to do that right now. This is what it was and I miss it. I miss all of these things about it. And those might not be things that we can change. So taking a step back and saying, what is it that is not going right? What are my kids telling me that they miss? And what is it that I can change? What can I do differently? What can I structure back into their life in order to create excitement, predictability, just, those day-to-day things that maybe we didn't realize we depended so much on.
Such valuable information. Parenting is hard even when there's not a pandemic. So we just so appreciate you coming on the 209 podcast and taking the time, Charity. For our listeners, be sure to get her book later this month. It's called The Business of Behavior, The Behaviorist Roadmap to Independent Practice. Charity, it's been so much fun talking to you, and thanks again for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so much fun to talk about all this, and I really hope that I've helped someone somewhere make a change that'll just have a positive impact, because we all need some positivity.
Well, I'm sure you definitely helped at least one person with the information you shared with us. So good luck on your book. I'm excited to watch the growth of your website, and have a good rest of your week.
Yes, you too. Thank you so much.
If you want to listen to more episodes of the 209 podcast, head over to 209magazine.com, Spotify, iTunes, or any other podcast platform.